The Medical Kidnap Show on KFNX Phoenix Talk Radio with Rick Wood and Brian Shilhavy.
Welcome to the Medical Kidnap Show. I'm your host, Rick Wood.
And I'm Brian Shilhavy, the producer of the Medical Kidnap Show. And I'm also the editor of medicalkidnap.com, which is part of the Health Impact News Network.
And we're thrilled to have with us today Lori Ford from the Arizona DCS Oversight Group. Lori has been is the leader of this group. And so welcome to the Medical Kidnap Show, Lori.
Thanks, you guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Lori, as the leader of this Arizona Department of Child Service Oversight Group, tell us a little bit about the group, why it was formed, and what its function is.
Sure. I was involved with a dependency case with my granddaughter. A few years ago, it was a case where I was living out of state, actually, and driving over for every hearing. I wasn't directly involved, meaning my name was not on the case. But as a grandmother, I was making the trip, and I started to just think to myself, this isn't right. This seems very very weird what's going on in the court here. So I started to do some research. And I must admit, it took me a really long time, months, before I could wrap my head around what I was researching as far as the Adoption Safe Families Act, where that was enacted in 1997 by Bill and Hillary Clinton. And what I got out of that was the fact that to remove children from a home, it was being financially incentivized. So it took me a while to wrap my head around all that. Unfortunately, I sat there in the court every hearing, and I felt very, very powerless over the injustices that were happening in this court. And I realized then all of these people in this so-called court are getting paid out of the same kitty. They're getting paid out of the Title IV funding, which, if your listeners don't know, is our Social Security. So I started doing more research. I started reaching out to people. There was another woman that had contacted me, and so we started kind of putting this group together. And there's other groups out there. So I kind of took a leap in faith and went, you know what? This is going to be a working group. This isn't going to just be an online telephone group that complains. We are going to start doing something about it. This is going to be a working group. We are going to start showing up at meetings. We are going to insist that we get public input at these meetings. So that's how it kind of started and grew from there. We have some real movers and shakers in our group. It's not a huge group. We don't have meetings, per se, get-together meetings or anything. We have people in the group that have branched out and are kind of doing their own thing, but they're still a part of our group. We don't take responsibility for what they're doing outside of our group. We have people that have showed up at these public meetings because we do put it out there. So it doesn't mean that everybody that gets up there and talks or shows up at these public meetings is part of our group, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah. So the people that do show up at these meetings, at the public meetings, have been informed by us that there is a public meeting and they can show up. They don't have to speak if they don't want to. There's no pressure there. So we are getting quite a turnout at these public meetings.
Lori,
Which is fantastic.
when I was trying to get a hold of you, I was told that you were in court. Why were you in court? What do you guys do things inside the courtroom? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Several of us are court watchers. We go into the dependency court and we just observe what is going on with all the players in the courtroom. We take notes on that. We don't take notes on anything specific about the cases. For example, we don't write down the case numbers. We don't even write down the children's names. We don't write down the parents' names. We just go in and we observe the black robes, the guardian ad litem, the Attorney General's office, whose client is the Department of Child Safety, the public pretenders that are in there. So we document what is going on as far as the case itself. And we are finding that there's a lot of procedures and practices of these players in the courtroom that are ongoing, meaning it's the same thread through each court hearing that we attend.
Now, do they know you're there? Do they try to prevent you from going into the court?
They do know that we're there. In Arizona, for the dependency courts, the judges are to give an admonition. So the admonition consists of common sense, that we do not leave the courtroom and put the name of the children out, their social security number, their address, anything like that. And of course, we adhere to that. So there's times when VCS does want us out of the courtroom. So their attorney, which is the Assistant Attorney General's office, they will say to the black robe, hey, we want this courtroom closed. So.
And do they close the courtroom at that point?
You know what? So far, I have never gotten kicked out of a courtroom.
Okay.
I know there's been other members of the group that have gotten kicked out of the courtrooms. So there was for example, the case with the Chandler family where the SWAT team came in. That was a pretty high profile case. And at the time it was Timothy Ryan who presided over that particular case. And at the time, he was the presiding judge for juvenile court. There was myself and some other members of the group in the courtroom. There was also Kelly Townsend, a state representative, and a reporter, Diana Nanez, from the Arizona Republic. He did kick them out of the courtroom, but let us stay in.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So we did not get kicked out of that that court, for that particular case under Ryan. There's been others. Yeah, there's been others that they don't want us in there, but But I don't know. So far, myself personally, I've never gotten kicked out of the courtroom.
So you
There's
guys
been-
go as observers to make sure, kind of like you're not there, like you said. I'm just trying to clarify. You're not there to necessarily follow up on the individual details of every case. You're watching the people that are supposed to be helping these children, and you're making sure they're doing their job as much as possible, or at least you're observing so you could give voice if they're not. That's kind of
Right.
what your group is about. Is that correct?
That's correct. We do follow up with the parents in and outside of the courtroom in private conversations. We let the parents know, usually before they go into court, what they can expect. This is not a real court, we tell them. Do not expect that this is a court that's based on evidence. Don't expect any exculpatory evidence to be allowed in. So we kind of guide parents through the whole kangaroo court system of dependency court, so they know what to expect. Then we do follow up with parents after their court hearings. So we're just in there, we're trying to make these people somewhat accountable.
And Lori,
they're still pretty blatant, about what they're doing when we're in there, and we got to keep our poker faces on and continue writing.
so Lori, do you charge the parents for this? Is there a group that is behind your group that provides funding, or are you 100% volunteer? And if so, just tell us, tell the public what that's about. And if it's 100% volunteer, help us to understand why you're doing this.
It is 100% volunteer. We get no money from anybody. We have no funding source. And the reason that we do this is because it's so important. This is the future of our country, the future of our nation. And family means everything to all of us. So that's why we do it. We see so many rights being violated in this dependency court system and through the Arizona Department of Child Safety. And there's one thing I cannot deal with, and that's injustice. I can't deal with injustice. So we're 100% volunteer. And yes, I mean, it does get expensive. We have gone to court hearings, not just in Phoenix, Tucson, Florence, all different places. And, there's gas and there's expenses, but we feel that it's worth it. We do not want to become a nonprofit, a 501c3 or anything like that, because we don't want to be under the thumb of the government.
So, Lori, you mentioned you talked about meetings and going to court hearings and things like this. I know this last week you gave testimony at a meeting. Governor Doug Ducey and Cindy McCain's Arizona Human Trafficking Council. You gave testimony there. What were the concerns you addressed with the council during your time speaking to them?
Sure. They have different presenters at these meetings, and the presenters seem to cover different websites, trafficking websites. So my comment dealt with there's another trafficking website that nobody's mentioned, and it ends in .gov. And in Arizona, we have what's called the Heart Gallery, and it's affiliated with DCS. So they have these children, they have pictures of the children, and they have descriptions of the children. So-and-so loves makeup. She loves horses. She loves pizza. And my concern was, look, you're talking about all these human trafficking websites. Well, .gov has one too, and it's under DCS. So there's no precaution.
So let me interrupt you for just a second so that we can fully understand what you're saying. You're saying that this is a .gov website that traffics children, but I think what I'm hearing you say, that's not its intention. You're just saying it happens. Is the intention of this .gov website to what? To recruit foster parents or adoptive parents? Is that what you're talking about?
That's what it is. It puts these children out there they're trying to get these kids adopted.
Okay.
That's the intention of the website.
That's insane to me. That's crazy to me. So they put the kids' pictures with a description, kind of like you're adopting a puppy or something. But so they take these kids' photos and they take their information and they put them on a website hoping to get adoptive or foster parents. That just seems like you're saying that's ripe for a pedophile or a human trafficker to go on there and go shopping, basically.
Yes. And there's no precautions to get into that website. You don't need to register. You don't need to do any of that. It's just open to the world. And, these poor children on there, I mean, you look at their pictures and they have 5 to 8 different photographs of these children. So the pictures of these children are just heart-wrenching to me because it's like, okay, they're being told to smile. You can tell there's forced smiles going on. They brag about how it's a day of pampering for these children, how they get to, get their hair done and they get to put on different clothes and they get their picture taken. It's really creepy. So
now, Lori, let me ask you, who are these children? I mean, are these children that parents have given up for adoption, that they have parents who don't want them? Or are these children who are in foster care that were removed from their parents against the will of the parents? Or is it a mixture of the two?
The children that are on this Heart Gallery, which is part of the DCS website, are children that are in DCS custody. They're foster kids. They're kids in group homes. So this is a forced adoption, a forced rehoming, if you will, website of children that are in DCS custody.
Well,
so what they're doing.
Excuse me. I find that rather incredible because as a journalist covering these types of stories for the past 5 years on medicalkidnap.com, many of the parents whose stories that we have published and have given us photos of their own children that they are trying to get back, which they have published on their own, either through like a Facebook page or their own website or a GoFundMe page. And then as copyright owners of those photos, they give them to us to publish in our stories. And what has happened numerous times there in Arizona is that the judge in the dependency court will order us through the parents. They will put pressure on the parents and order us to remove those photos, that we don't have a right to publish those photos. And here now, Lori, you're telling us they take even more photos, up to 4 or 5 per child, and they go out and publish it. Is that right?
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. So they do it under the guise of, look at these children. They need a forever home because, I don't know, they were treated so badly in the other home, but they would never say, they're not saying that. They're not putting that out there. They also not only put them on their website, the Heart Gallery, they put them on Instagram, they put them on Facebook, they put them on Twitter, they put them all over social media. So
the very thing they're telling parents not to do with their own children, they're doing it with other people's children.
Yes. So they're pimping out kids online is basically what they're doing. So that was my concern at the Human Trafficking Council meeting is, hey, wake up. You're talking about all these websites that are human trafficking websites. They end in .iu. They end in .is. Well, hello, you forgot one. It ends in .gov. So,
and what is really horrible? Oh, excuse me, Laurie. What is really horrible here is that this is not a theory. We know that this has happened. When we look at, for example, the fraud sham case, we know that happened. We know that they took little Devaney into foster care. We don't know if her picture was put up there or not, but it's very possible. And we know that this little girl who was forcibly removed against her will, against the will of her parents, she was put into a home where she was sexually abused and trafficked and filmed as part of a child pornography ring. So, hello, Arizona. This is not a theory. Laurie is not drumming the beat of a drum that has no basis in fact. This is actually happening.
It's actually happening. Yes. Yes. The descriptions of these children on this website are so leading that any predator can come in there and say, oh, you know what? Wow, this little girl likes makeup and pizza and horses. So they're going to cater to that. Now, I'm predicting that DCS is going to say, oh, no, we vet our people. We vet these adoptive parents. But really, do they? There's no proof of that. There's no follow-up for adoptive parents. Once the papers are signed and these judges sign off on these adoptions, the child is then adopted, forced adoption, rehomed to another home, never to be checked on again. So there's no precautions. That's what they're going to come back and say, I'm predicting, is, oh, well, no, I mean, we're not going to let predators, adopt these children. Well, really?
David Frodsham
They already have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rick and I joined in at the same moment. We already know they've done it. And it wasn't just Devaney. There's another young boy who was in that home who has filed a $15 million lawsuit. So we know it's happening. We know it.
Well, sure. And that's just a foster parent, just a foster parent. I'm saying that facetiously because Frodsham was a foster parent. And these kids called and called and called DCS and nothing was done. So can you imagine if one of these children on this website gets adopted, which is why they're on this website, because they're looking for forever homes, then that's it. There's no follow-up. So it's proven that Arizona doesn't even follow up on their foster parents. So we know that there's no follow-up on any adoptive parent.
Wow.
So,
Well, I mean, Frodsham is
yeah.
guardian. The ad litem in the Frodsham and Devaney's case was recommended Frodsham to adopt. So I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like there's just no. Oh yeah, he's a great adoptive. You know, they were. It's just crazy. We don't even know. Like you said, we don't know what goes on after those kids are adopted. We don't know how strongly the adoptive parents or foster parents are even vetted. It's just, and now we have a website where they can go pick what kind of flavor of child they want to abuse. It's crazy.
Right. So my purpose of getting up there was pointing that out. They were talking about all these human trafficking websites. Well, guess what? You got one under .gov.
And Lori, what about the Peterson case? I mean, that's the big thing that is making national news right now. Here, there's a government official, the county assessor for Maricopa County, has been arrested, indicted in 3 states and the mainstream media doesn't tend to use the term trafficking, but that's exactly what he was doing. Illegal adoptions, breaking the law, bringing women and children into this country. So was Doug Ducey and Cindy McCain's group that you appeared with, and maybe you can even tell us a little bit about their group, because the name of the group is Arizona Human Trafficking Council. Did they address Peterson in this meeting? And in past meetings, what have they addressed and what have they accomplished through this council?
I don't know anything that they've accomplished, to tell you the truth. Well, what seems to me to be happening is it's a council where there's presenters that talk about human trafficking. So there's supposedly different entities that are educating people about human trafficking. The council itself, I don't see them doing anything to prevent human trafficking. So from what I have observed from this council, I don't believe they do anything to prevent human trafficking.
Well, Cindy McCain has been a very public, high-profile person in the public that is come out against human trafficking. I mean, we can look up many news reports where she has gone head-to-head, for example, with Lacey and Larkin, the 2 guys who started Backpage, and has been shown that Backpage was behind, a significant majority amount of the human trafficking happening in this country. The FBI shut their website down. They had their assets seized and they're awaiting trial today. So, I mean, what is Cindy McCain's involvement in this? What is the purpose of this council if they're not doing anything? I mean, what are they supposed to be doing? I mean, is there a mission statement or a purpose to this council?
This council went into effect because of a Doug Ducey executive order 2015-12. The Human Trafficking Council is through the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. It was established to address human trafficking in Arizona through strategic and targeted human trafficking prevention and awareness efforts. And I'm reading this off of their website. The council is authorized under Executive Order 2015-12 to develop a comprehensive and coordinated victim service plan, evaluate and report to the governor on statewide human trafficking data, promote greater collaboration with law enforcement, state agencies, and the community at large, and raise public awareness about victim services, restitution, and prevention. The council consists of members appointed by the governor.
Okay, so this is, I'm assuming, funded. It's funded through the governor's office with taxpayer funding, or is there a private organization, or is there like a Cindy McCain Foundation behind this funding it? Where's the funding coming from? If you know.
I can only assume, Brian. I don't know for sure, but yes, the McCain Foundation is involved with this. There's several layers to this human trafficking council. They have different focuses: child well-being, human trafficking, juvenile justice, youth commission, AmeriCorps, service and volunteerism, substance abuse, violence against women prevention. So there's layers and layers of this human trafficking council. To me, their focuses are just a matter of who they can get to give presentations to them. And, I have found that it's interesting. These meetings are interesting to me because I learn a lot from these presentations. But what's baffling to me is all of the presentations that are ever given, DCS is doing the same thing that these people are presenting about, but DCS is never mentioned in anything. So it's just kind of mind-boggling that there's presenters that are presenting, like, for example, the last time they were talking about Backpage and they were talking about all these different websites that are trafficking children, but I'm like, they're not applying anything. They didn't apply this DCS website to anything that they said.
So they're basically doing the same thing as they're warning people against. This is what traffickers do. And then they're turning around and really modeling what the traffickers are doing with their website. That's what you're saying. It's not funny, but it's funny,
Right. Yeah. So they're pimping out kids on their website for forced adoption. They even go as far as to say, oh, so-and-so needs to be an only child. Like how you go to the Humane Society and they say, oh, this dog doesn't get along with other dogs. It needs to be the only dog.
Right.
Yes. So they have a child mill website. Now, Paul Peterson was never mentioned at this meeting. Never. So I want to point out also that every single one of those adoptions that Paul Peterson did in the state of Arizona has a judge's signature on it. Judge Reese, years and years ago, I believe it was in 2006, he said, no, I'm not going to sign off on this adoption. It's illegal. So, and that was with Marsha Lee's baby. So they took it into the Court of Appeals. At that time, Ann Timmer was a judge in the Court of Appeals. She overruled Judge Reese's decision. And her reasoning for the overruling was it's in the best interest of the child. So we had a dependency judge trying to do the right thing. It goes to the Court of Appeals. It gets overturned. And now Justice Timmer is on the Supreme Court. But our question is now, what is going to happen to those judges, every single judge that signed off on those adoption papers for these Marshallese children that were human trafficked over here. It's important that that your listeners know that with the Paul Peterson case in Utah, they're calling it human trafficking. In Arkansas, they're calling it human trafficking. He's got charges for human trafficking. Now, in the state of Arizona, Attorney General Brnovich does not even ever mention human trafficking. Human trafficking is not in his indictment against Paul Peterson.
Okay, so Lori, Lori, in these public hearings that they have, you get an opportunity to speak, and I know that, and from what it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, parents get the opportunity to speak sometimes as well. Have you seen anything move from these testimony times? And I know this is a lot to think about, but I know that somebody came and testified this week that wasn't a parent, but had a relationship with a parent, an Arizona parent. So can you just kind of tell me about that testimony time, how parents get to testify or advocates on behalf of parents, and tell me a little bit about the special guest who testified this week in that same meeting you were in.
Sure. I call it what it is. It's public comment. Now, to me, to call it testimony or testify, to me, in my mind, that means you're under oath.
Okay, that helps.
Okay, so I call it public comment because that's what it is listed as. There was a gentleman who went up to the podium. He is not a parent, and he spoke about how his family had a relationship with the McCain family. Unfortunately, Cindy McCain walked out of the meeting in the middle of public comment. So actually, they called my name. She walked out. I don't believe it had anything to do with me, but it was just interesting because I really wanted her to hear about the human trafficking site that ended in .gov. So then this businessman gets up. Cindy McCain is not in the room. And he's talking about this $200 million lawsuit that an associate of his is dealing with through DCS. He was so eloquent in his speaking. It just alluded that this was coming from his heart, and it fell on deaf ears. I want to make it clear that when we go to these meetings, we have learned not to expect any action on anything that we've ever talked about from these people. So we go.
Okay, so let me just interrupt for a second, because you mentioned $200 million lawsuit, and that would be Neil Suits, who we've covered his story. We've actually had him on the program. And so what you're saying is that a businessman, a business owner in the state of Arizona, who is an associate with Neil Suits, he's not a parent, he's not an advocate. He was concerned about his business associate, Neil Suits, who we have published his story. We're one of the few, if not only actually, who have published his story and given him an outlet to talk about what he discovered in Arizona among his powerful former in-laws in the Mormon church and in the business community. So one of his business associates, a business owner there in Arizona, got up, testified that his family has a relationship with the McCain family, and Cindy McCain, who is the chairwoman, co-chair of this council, walked out before he even got to give his public comment. Is that what happened?
Exactly what happened. Yes. So I don't know what her reason was for walking out in the middle of public comment. I don't know. She has a boot on her leg. I don't know if that was causing her problems. I don't know. We have no idea. But she did not get to hear this gentleman's public comment.
So, Lori, you said something too that I want to circle back to, because I kind of asked you a giant question, and I want to emphasize this. You tell parents and you tell people who get up during the public comment time that, don't expect much to happen. So has this council done anything? Have you seen any progress, or is it basically just more informational? Like you've said, you've benefited from learning, from when they bring special guests in and they present on a topic, you learn something. But besides that, have you seen any help at all extended to anyone? Are there any stories of them stepping in to stop or help or solve any of these issues? Or is it just mainly talking?
No, we have not gotten any results from the Arizona Human Trafficking Council. I want to point out the first meeting that we went to was on May 28th. And unbeknownst to us, they had people from the federal HHS and the DOJ as their guests. So at that time, the DCES director was Greg McKay. So we did get up and, we did our public comment. Shortly thereafter, on the human trafficking website, they put presented materials on their website. And so I was perusing through, there was a memo from Director Greg McKay to Cindy McCain and Gil Orantia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. They are co-chairs of the Human Trafficking Council. And it was a memo, 2-page memo, that the subject is inaccurate data presented at May 28, 2019 Human Trafficking Council meeting. So he goes on to say that we gave false statements, inaccurate information. He goes as far as to say this: the group signed in today calls themselves DCS Oversight Group and are made up of some people whom have had unfortunate life-changing outcomes as a result of DCS intervention. The first allegation they leveled was that DCS has no oversight. Therefore, the DCS Oversight Group is required to seek accountability. So that's in his second paragraph. This has been the only thing that has come back or put on their website addressing us as the DCS Oversight Group.
So the only movement, the only testimony.
Yeah, but it's nothing. It's nothing. And here it is. It's a letter. It's that he didn't even sign. It's an unsigned letter from Greg McKay. Now, shortly thereafter, Greg McKay had stepped down. The new director is Mike Faust. And we'll see. We'll see. We're still keeping an eye on Greg McKay because he went to Child Help as the chief operating officer. But if you go on Child Help website, there's no information. There's no picture of Greg McKay on there. So we're still keeping an eye on Greg McKay. He's not off our radar.
So, Lori, thanks so much for being on here today. Just as we're wrapping up here, is there a way that people can get a hold of you get a hold of your group? You have a contact info for them?
Yes. The website is azzdcsoc@gmail.com. We also have our Twitter page, and it is at AZDCS Warriors. And our YouTube channel is under AZDCS Oversight Group.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us tonight, Lori. We really appreciate your insight and everything you're sharing with us. And we appreciate you guys and your groups fighting the good fight. So keep it up.
Thank you so much, you guys, for what you're doing as well. My pleasure.
This has been the Medical Kidnap Show on 1100 KFNX Radio. You can follow us on the web at medicalkidnap.com. Also, subscribe to our podcast, The Medical Kidnap Show, and follow us on YouTube under The Medical Kidnap Show.